Hi, I'm Carol Buchanan, and I'm here with my friend Craig Lancaster at the Montana Festival of the Book. Craig, it's so good to see you again. I've really enjoyed your writing, especially the two I've read, and I'm so looking forward to the collection of short stories coming out in December. Now, your first book, which I almost always get mixed up, is 600 Hours of a Life. Of Edward. 600 Hours of Edward.
Yeah.
Which was first published as
600 Hours of Life, which is why you know it as that.
Yes,
because that's when you read it.
That's when I read it. I read it when you very first self-published it, and I loved it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And I loved the second one, and I'm sure I'm going to love the short stories too.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
We've been talking about all the books you've written in a very short time. You have a new short story collection coming out in December, don't you?
That's correct.
And it's called Quantum Physics and the Art of Departure.
It is. The title is a little inscrutable, but I promise that in the text of the book, it does get justified, and it does make sense in context.
Oh, I can imagine it will, but I'm so eager to get the book and figure out how that plays out, quantum physics being particle theory and merging of matter with thought and so forth.
Yeah, this is more the emotional end of quantum physics, the idea that for every choice we make or don't make in the world we're in, that somewhere in an alternate universe the opposite choice is playing out. So
fascinating concept.
Yeah, well, that's about the extent of my understanding of quantum physics, I'm afraid to say.
Well, that's more than I know.
Yeah.
Now, your two previous books were fairly different from this, are they? Or are you still keeping to the main theme of what you write?
I'm still, mining family relationships and family drama, but these are, obviously shorter sketches. So rather than the full view of a novel, I'm just kind of opening up the curtain, taking a peek, and then closing it again. So.
Well, I am really looking forward to that collection.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And I find it interesting, too, that most men don't write necessarily about family relationships. What made you break the mold? I guess I think of family relationships as being more in the chick lit vein.
Yeah.
But you certainly don't write chick lit.
No, I write family, but I try to do it with a literary bent, where it's more driven by those relationships and less driven by a plot that I have to get from, the discovery of a body to, the resolution of the crime. I don't do that sort of writing. The reason that I gravitated to it is that it's always been my interest. I've always been fascinated at the way we interact with each other and where the breaches come from and how we deal with the issues between us. And there's been enough silence in some corners of my family that caused me to wonder, why can't we just talk about this? And so the books kind of plow into that psychological territory of, why do we cover up the things we cover up, and why do we dance around the things that we really want to say?
Well, the Summer Sun certainly has an intriguing mystery at the core of it.
It does. And
when you finally finished the book, I understood what the silence was.
Right.
And why.
Right. And then that's the course that is followed. The son, who is the brunt of the silence, thinks it's punitive, and it's not necessarily.
No.
So
it was an attempt to protect father protecting son.
Right, and an attempt by the father to avoid some of the fates that had befallen him. So, and I think that happens a lot. I think that parents of children often make some decision in the best interest of the children for whatever reason, and the child doesn't necessarily see that.
No, the child can misinterpret
Right.
either an action or a silence.
Yeah, yeah. And so think of every relationship you have in your life, or relationships that you know about. They're all filled with not just the things we say and do, but the things we don't say and don't do, and all of those things come to bear on what the relationship is, whether it's good or bad.
Yes,
So.
yes. And of course, 600 hours of a life, or 600 hours of Edward, depending on which
version of it you
get.
got. Yeah.
That's a man trying to either avoid relationships, but he seems to want them. He wants friends, he wants connection, but he doesn't know how to get there.
And he doesn't necessarily know that he wants it.
Yes.
And that's interesting. And the idea for that book really was, what happens when someone who has rigidly constructed the world they live in, what happens when the world does to them what it does to all of us, and that is, oh, you have plans? Well, let me show you what a curveball looks like.
Yes.
And over the course of less than a month in this guy's life, a lot of curveballs come for him. And, and I saw great dramatic possibilities in that.
Yeah. Well, he seems to not have any resources to deal with curveballs because everything is so rigid, so controlled.
Right. And as long as life adheres to the script that he has in mind, he can deal with it. And so what he learns is to deal with life that doesn't follow your script.
Yes.
And I dare say that all of us, no matter how spectacularly we think life has turned out for us, it didn't necessarily follow what we had in mind.
Don't they say that life is what happens when you're making other plans?
Exactly, yeah. John Lennon said that. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So,
well, he should know.
he's a very good example of that.
Yes,
yeah.
he sure is, yeah. And I'm sure they probably never thought they'd become the Beatles.
They were kids in Liverpool,
Yeah.
I mean, who has... I guess some people have that dream, but I think, you have particular talents, and you meet up with the right people at the right moments, when the wind is blowing a certain way, and you end up with this fabulous life. And but it's still life. It's still the same thing that the rest of us go through.
It's like playing poker.
Sure.
You get dealt a different hand.
Yeah, so you have to figure out how to make that hand work.
Yep, you do.
So
it's interesting that in your writing career so far, you've experimented a lot with publishing. We can get to a slightly different aspect of this.
Sure. I started out in self-publishing, but it was very rudimentary self-publishing. And
was that with 600 Hours?
Yeah, when 600 Hours was 600 Hours of a Life, I published it through CreateSpace, and just sort of haphazardly thrust it out into the world, and it got some notice from mainstream publishing. Had a new life as 600 Hours of Edward, has had all these fabulous things happen to it, and that in turn led me to Amazon Encore, which published my second novel, The Summer Sun. And Amazon Encore operates as a traditional publisher in the sense that the book is available for the trade under the same conditions that any other book is in the trade, but it's a subsidiary of the massive online giant. And so at the time that I became involved with them, they were still trying to get their legs under them, and they did a fabulous job with the book. I couldn't be more proud of the book they created and the book that they continue to market, and has had its own journey that was a little different than 600 Hours of Edward. And so finally for this third book, it's a collection of short stories, which I don't want to say short stories have been marginalized in American literature, but they certainly are beyond their historic heyday. And, the literary journals are shrinking, and there are fewer and fewer publishers are doing short stories. And so while all this other stuff was going on with my first 2 books, I launched a publishing house in Billings, Montana, which you know all too well. And so I thought, well, I'll do it myself. I'll do it right. I'll get an editor. I'll hire an editor to herd the manuscript through, and I'll contact booksellers and get some accounts made. And so I'm going to give that a shot and see how it goes. I just basically want the book out in the world, just like I have the same dream that any other author has.
Of course, we all do.
Yes.
So you're going to take Missouri Breaks Press is going to publish your short story collection.
Right. This is after it's published two other books by authors who are not me. One of them is you. Yeah. Your book, Gold Under Ice, was my first book, your second novel. And I also released a book called The Big Sky by and by a man named Ed Kimmick, who is well known in Billings as the City Lights columnist of the Billings Gazette, and it's just a series of long-form journalism about people and places in Montana.
How do you balance the 2 careers? I'm not talking about your day job now, which you had the sense not to quit yet.
Yeah. Well, I would be living under an overpass if I did. I'm intensely interested in both the writing of fiction, but also in what goes into making a book and marketing a book. And so, consequently, because I don't really need to sleep,
That's a biggie.
I'm able to dabble in the areas of what has been my professional background. My professional background is as a copy editor and a graphic designer, which are 2 necessary skills for actually producing a physical book.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So. Well, I know with Gold Under Ice, your company did a marvelous job on the cover and the editing and everything. And the internal design of the book was excellent.
Yeah, we had a great book to work with, you and I, and so that was the perfect coming together of someone who had a wonderful story to tell, and a press that could present it in a way that did it justice. So.
Well, I think you certainly did do it justice. It's very well done, and I was very pleased with all the work.
Right.
But which do you think you like better?
Oh, I like the writing better. If writing sustained me enough that I didn't have to dabble in publishing, I probably would stop. What I really need in my life are more hours available to write. I never say I need more hours available to design the cover of this book I'm putting out. I find the time for that. What I find myself saying is, I wish I could spend more time on my next manuscript. And
yes.
So if I ever reached a financial place where I had nothing but time to write, that's what I would spend my time doing.
Well, thank you so much, Craig. It's been such fun and talking about books with you and writing and self-publishing and the whole gamut of today's publishing and novel writing world.
Well, thank you so much, Carol.
You're welcome. Take care.
You too.